Welcome back to the stream. Thank you so much to Lee for the super interesting session on Azure Automation. There's a few things I'm going to be following up with him there. So next up, we have Lorna, so this is the second time that you're hearing from Logon VSI now today. The first time was a community session. Lorna's been put in charge of the sponsored session for the next 15 minutes. It's also the second time that she has come to speak to us. So thank you very much for that, Lorna. So this is all about, as usual with Logon VSI, about investigating performance, and particularly around the new 2004 version of Windows. So excellent topic. Thank you very much, Lorna. Take it away.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be back. Thanks for having us. And today, like you said, I've got the pleasure of taking you through our performance insights for the update. But as Mark alluded to earlier, he didn't do the marketing slides. This is a sponsor slot, so bear with me for just a minute or two. So first of all, a quick recap of Logon VSI. I expect that most of today's attendees will already know us for VDI load testing capabilities, using synthetic users to get two key metrics for VDI environments. First of those is a baseline performance, so that's how well did the VDI environment operate, or how does it perform before any optimizations and before adding any loads. And then the second of those metrics that you'll be familiar with is our VSI max, which is an indication of the maximum user density for the VDI environment. But aside from vendors who typically like to kind of compare and benchmark against each other, most of our clients and their end users kind of interact directly with business applications. So you might have noticed that over the last couple of years, Logon VSI have been kind of extending the job description of our pure synthetic users. So let's quickly have a look at some of those additional roles that those synthetic users have taken on. So firstly, we've brought in application compatibility testing, and that's all about allowing businesses to quickly validate that after you've done an update like the Windows 10 May 2020 update, that your applications are going to work, that they're going to perform well, and that you're going to basically be able to roll that out as a production to all your end users. But we do that within the safety of the pre-production environment. And secondly, along here, application load testing, you'll see we've added the ability to load test business critical applications, such as could be maybe your industry specific ones, like maybe Bloomberg for finance, or Epic maybe for healthcare, or even your custom built applications. And recently we've been asked quite a lot for, specifically around about Zoom, which is interesting today, or Microsoft Teams kind of performance as well. So again, load testing, you do that within the safety of your pre-production, so you don't interrupt your real users. And then continuous testing. So our third use case is putting a single synthetic user into the production environment alongside those real users. And that allows you to check the application availability and the performance of applications in the live environment. But the beauty of synthetic users, you don't need to pay them overtime, so they can come in at the weekend, they can come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, do your morning checks, and you'll already know what the kind of performance of your environment is. So it's much, much better than having to wait for real users and be responsive to them. Now, actually, one of the other sessions earlier on, I think it was Lyndell Harry from Control Up was talking about Scout Bees, and somebody asked the question, what's the difference between Logon PI and Scout Bees? Just to kind of reiterate, so if we're doing continuous testing, we check the login time of the platform, but we also log into the business critical applications, and we also give you the tools to develop scripts. So those allow you to go really deep into the business process. And those scripts then have timers for individual components of the application. And if you assign kind of performance thresholds in those timers, then you get notified automatically when something doesn't work, or if it's a low performance. You can pull it out with the API, maybe go into Splunk. So I hope that answers your question. Anyway, overall, this end result gives you a kind of true end user experience metric. That's giving you availability and performance, not only of your VDI stack, but actually all the applications on top as well. So just gives you a little bit more. So to try and make it real for you, let's talk about a couple of examples. So logistics giant DHL, they needed to ensure that 4,000 of their applications could start up within the environment after they'd applied some changes. And it took an outsourced team of 6 full-time staff that were in India to manually check each application after startup. Don't really fancy having that job myself. That must have been pretty boring for them. But with any manual process, you know, there's always human error, and the result was a really kind of costly and time-consuming process. So you can imagine when they were moving from Windows 7 up to Windows 10, it meant that they were going to have to hire additional staff. In fact, they were looking at 18 full-time staff to keep up with the more kind of rigorous update cycle of Windows 10. I'm sure you're familiar with the cadence of that. But by implementing Logon Enterprise to kind of automate that process, the synthetic user does all those checks, it checks the compatibility and also the performance with those timers that I was talking about. And that's for every application, and there's no human error involved there, which is great. And then the return on investment DHL reported was that they got 2.5 million US dollars back, which is pretty cool. We talked about application load testing. So an example of this is a Chicago healthcare organisation that we've been working with. They were building a Nutanix and Citrix environment on which to run the Epic healthcare application, and they had 4,000 users. They took advice from each of the different vendors on how to size the environment correctly, and then they just applied that. But surprise, surprise, you know, rather than reaching 4,000 users, unfortunately, they only got to 2,900, which is quite a massive difference. So you can imagine the shock in their face and how the Nutanix sales guys were rubbing their hands with glee, thinking that they were going to make lots of new money. However, by using our application load testing with customized scripts and then fine-tuning the environment, they were able to actually reach that 4,000 user capacity goal. And that saved them under something, I think it's around about 3,000 US dollars per year per user as a total cost of ownership, which is very significant. And finally, for continuous and availability and performance testing, we work with a US managed service provider called StarTech. They're an organisation that delivers a call centre application to hundreds of different locations across the US. However, if their application isn't working, or if it's so slow that it's just unusable, then they've got all these financial penalties that are built into their contracts. And I guess I've been a call centre staff. I quite like to put my feet up if I could. They probably were, you know, delighted that sometimes the system went down. It gave them a bit of a break. But it was taking those call centre staff around about an hour and a half to even notify StarTech that either the system was down or it was really, really slow. And that was costing them 1.5 million in US dollars every year in penalties. So that's a phenomenal amount of penalties there. By implementing our Logon Enterprise continuous testing solution, by putting a synthetic user at each different location around the US, they now know within 5 minutes if there's some kind of availability or performance issue. And you can imagine that's saving them absolutely millions in penalties. And meanwhile, it's actually improving their customer satisfaction ratings as well, because the system's always kind of performant, which is great. Okay, so that was a commercial break. Thanks very much for your attention. I really appreciate it. So now let's get into the Windows 10 nitty-gritty, if you like. So Windows 10, 2004 I call it, 2004 I saw Jim called it, whatever you call it, is a much larger update than the Windows 10 1909 or October 2019 update. That was more like a service pack, whereas this is bringing out a lot more kind of new features. So they've got an updated task manager with GPU temperature monitoring, an optimized Windows search with a new Cortana experience as well, and they've got this new sandbox as well, which is great. I know that Windows search is something that I would normally turn off. Lots of people turn off that indexer feature because it really kind of causes too much CPU or usage, or it causes high disk usage as well. So to prevent that from occurring, basically they've got a new algorithm that detects a high disk usage, and then if that's been detected, then they slow down the Windows indexer, which is great news. Don't have a lot of time to go into all the features, but we do have a blog, so I'd encourage you to pop over to our website and see what Mark's been writing about some of the new features. But I'm here to talk about the kind of performance metrics. So first of all, let's talk about the lab where we actually carried out all this testing. Does that look familiar? Yes, it's actually the same slide that Mark used earlier on, so it's good that we're seeing, using the same environment. So thanks very much to Citrix for that one. And again, we're using the same kind of setup. So it's VMware ESX for the hypervisor. We've got VMware Horizon 7.12 to deliver the desktops. And then we used Windows 10 and Office version 2016, just because that's the kind of most popular choices that we see on premise for the VDI world at the moment. Thanks, Cisco. And we ran 3 different test scenarios. The first one is what you might call a clean environment, or it's kind of like the next finish install of Windows, but we did a few kind of minor tweaks. We also installed Office, we installed VMware Tools, we installed the VMware Horizon Agent, and that's just so that the users can connect to the desktops. And then we went in and removed OneDrive as a user-based client and installed OneDrive as a machine-based client, because just the performance is horrific if you don't do that. And then to compare that to, we looked at Citrix Optimizer, which is obviously available for free as a download, and we're in version 2.7.0.126. And we also did a comparison with VMware's operating system optimization tool, or OSOT, I think we call it, version B1151. Now, just some of you might think, oh, there's a new version of that. We'll come back to that in a wee minute. So we also went with the latest available security updates of each of these different releases, because we imagine that that's what our customers would be doing as well. You want to make sure that your system's secure, just to make you aware of the ones that we used. So let's get right into the results themselves. So the first environment we're going to look at is the one that's not optimized. So we expect poor performance here, and we don't expect the best user density. Remember, VSI max is the user density, or the number of users that we can fit in that system. So I'll shout out the numbers for you, and you just focus on which version of Windows it is. So start off with 1803 is 162 users, then 163, 150, oh, down to 86. Think about kind of how much hardware you'd have to run out and buy for that. And then with the latest update, there's certainly heading towards a much better user density. We can see that that's up at 153, which is good. Now, the baseline, let's have a look at that. Remember, this is the response time in milliseconds, and the lower it is, the more responsive the environment is. So let's just kind of look at the trend here. It's getting worse and worse and worse, slightly improved, and still not the best, but certainly not the worst either. So let's look at Citrix Optimizer as a comparison and what that does to the VSI max, the user density. So again, I'll shout out the numbers for you. So 206, 202, down to 185, up a little bit to 193, and then we're up at 203, so it's definitely improving again. But let's do a comparison against the clean on the left and then the Citrix Optimizer on the right. You can see that the user density is definitely much better on the right-hand side using Citrix Optimizer. So that would be a good compelling reason for me to use it. And again, if we do a kind of comparison with the baseline, here we've got the optimizer on the right. All the baselines are over 1200 milliseconds, which we would kind of rate, if you've ever looked at our ratings, as fair. So not bad. So let's look at the logon times then for the Citrix Optimizer. So we've got 1803, we've got 1809, then 1903, and then 2004. That's not bad at all. Let's do a comparison here with a non-optimized. Oh, definitely a lot more time to log on. And certainly if you were wanting to please your community of users, you probably want to be using some kind of optimization tool. So let's have a look at VMware OSOT. First of all, do the VSI max. So that's 249, then 250, which is great. A wee bit down to 236, 244, and then back up again to 250. But if you do a comparison again with the clean, you can see that this, again, much higher user density. And in fact, at risk of getting in trouble, I think that's slightly better than Citrix. Sorry, guys. And again, let's do a comparison with the baseline. You can see clearly on the right-hand side that VMware OSOT, the baselines are lower, which is a better thing. In fact, they're all under 1200, which we would rate as good in our rating scale, which is excellent. Okay, and again, let's look at the logon times for OSOT. First of all, 1803, 1809, 1909, and then 2004. They're all pretty similar, not too bad at all. And then let's look at it if we don't use VMware OSOT. Again, the login times there are a lot poorer, certainly indicating that it's worth doing an optimization tool. Now, I bet some of you are sitting there thinking, well, these aren't the only optimization tools that are out there. And you'd be absolutely right, because the VDI guys, I've got an optimization tool which is available on GitHub. Just Google the VDI guys, all one word, and you'll get to the GitHub. And then they've got a step-by-step instruction about how to implement that. And just for fun, we thought we'd do a quick comparison again between these two. So VSI max of 86 versus with the optimizer, you can get up to 250, and that's version 1909 of Windows 10, or 153 for 2004 versus 249. So definitely looks much, much better. And then what about the baseline? So again, the baseline's lower under the 1200, which again is good, versus a clean environment, which rates as fair. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Let's look at the logon times for that as well. Oh, no optimizations, quite pathetic. And then with the optimizer for 1909, again, without any optimizations with 2004, and then with 2004 with the optimizer from the VDI guys, is much, much better. So I think the results kind of speak for themselves there. So in conclusion, I guess test your own environment before you optimize, then use one of the free optimizers, check them out, see which one works for you with the different templates and the different options, and then test again. And then make sure you show both results to your manager so you can get a decent salary increase this year. And then, as we always talk about, make sure that every time you make a change to your environment, test, tune, test again, and you'll really be able to isolate where the performance bottlenecks are. And wait for Microsoft to bring out and to fix any initial issues before you actually roll that out to production to all your users, and just keep testing. Quick commercial at the end. Remember that we've got a download trial available on our website. We've made some new exciting new features, like WVD is now included. You can run natively in Azure, and we've made an upgrade to our application recorder, which is much improved. I think I might have run out of time for the Q&A. It might have been by design, but thanks. I'll see if there's any questions.
So we do have a minute left there,
Oh,
Lorna.
no. Be nice.
But I think you've managed to get away with it because I can't see any additional questions coming in. So I'm sure you're fine. We'll let you know if there are any more questions, and obviously you can be contacted through the portal.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on and talking to us again about Logon VSI.
You're very welcome. Great to see you. Thanks,
You
Jim.
too. Cheers.